What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the show. So we're going to take a look and listen to Senator Tim Kaine. He's going to be talking about the voting rights bills as well as Build Back Better. And whenever these senators do interviews, I like to at least show you guys, do kind of a reaction video to what they're saying, because I think it's very important that we understand how they feel about these different bills. And then we can also gauge how serious they are about moving forward when it comes to these bills. We've been following Senator Manchin, Senator Sinema, Speaker Pelosi, and all these different people when it comes to the legislation. But it's also important to look at some of these different senators that don't get as much airtime as some of the people that we always talk about. So Senator Tim Kaine, we're going to take a look and listen to him today. And I also want to take a look at the polls. So I did a poll earlier today. We're going to take a look at that poll. But first off, on this channel, we talk about financial news and what's going on in Washington, D.C. If that sounds like something interesting to you, please subscribe to the channel and hit that little bell notification. That way you'll get notified anytime we put out a video. And like always, if you see my name and a picture of me in the comment section, make sure you see a check mark next to my name. That check mark signifies that it's me. If you do not see that check mark, it's not me. It's someone trying to impersonate me. All right, so Senator Tim Kaine, he was on MSNBC earlier today, so let's go ahead and take a look. Here we go.
Be with you.
Let me pick up where this conversation with my colleagues on the reporting front left off. Do you believe Senator Schumer is going to hold that vote possibly as early as Monday to change the Senate rules?
I do. I think we're.
So you don't think it's a bluff?
No, I think we're going to do it because I think we have to do it. The stakes are so high that we can't just keep saying, well, we'll get to this later, we'll punt it down the road. And we have been in enough discussions for enough months that we all know what the stakes are. Every Democrat is a supporter of both the John Lewis bill and the Freedom to Vote Act, so there's uniformity there. So far, when we put these bills up, we get zero Republican help except for Lisa Murkowski on the Lewis Act. But with the stakes so high right now, after the attack on the Capitol to disenfranchise 80 million people, and after the efforts in state legislatures all over this country to disenfranchise people, Democrats have to fight to protect people's right to vote and the accuracy of calling elections. And so we need to vote on it, and I'm confident we're going to.
Okay, so what Senator Kaine is saying, that he's saying that they have the vote, so they have the 50 votes that they need. So all Democrats support both voting rights bills. Okay, so even Senator McCain and Senator Sinema, they support the voting rights bills. The only problem is that they don't support doing away with the filibuster. Okay, they don't support that. So that is where the hiccup is, because you're going to have to address the filibuster in order to just have it a majority vote. So if you have 50 Democrats and we can't do like a reconciliation bill for these voting rights bills. They're going to have to work on this filibuster and do something about the filibuster, or this won't go anywhere. And so that's what he's talking about there. The support for the voting rights bills are there. They just need to get to a point where they now can do something about the filibuster. And he was even saying that Senator Murkowski, she is a Republican and she is in favor of the John Lewis Act, the voting rights, so one of the voting rights acts. So this is going to be interesting to see what they do and how they maneuver around this filibuster, but that's what we're looking at right now when it comes down to it.
Clear, Senator, unless there is some change of heart from two of your Democratic colleagues who are key to this issue here of whether or not to change the Senate rules, if Senator Schumer does bring this to the floor Monday, it's going to fail. You know, again, barring any major change, which it doesn't seem likely. Are you comfortable with that? You still think that's the right move to send this message from Democrats to the American people?
I think we've got to fight for this. And rather than say, oh, well, you know, we don't have unanimity, there's uniform Republican opposition, so we're not even going to make the effort. I just don't think that's what we ought to do when faced with this existential threat to our democracy. Okay. There are many of us who really believe the democracy is threatened, and the only way to protect it is to more robustly protect people's rights to participate in it. Now, senators get elected to vote on stuff, and we don't get elected to not vote on stuff. And so the sequence and timing of votes, and I think there could be many of them, I would expect the first vote you'll see is an effort again to bring the bills back up, which Republicans have basically stonewalled. That might be the first vote that you'll see, but then you'll see other votes as well. When they reject again an effort to even debate voting rights, you will see that for Democrats, that's not the end of the discussion. We're continuing to have good discussions with Senators Manchin and Sinema about what they might do. They have been pretty plain. They don't want to abolish the filibuster. Fine. We have other options on the table. We could restore the filibuster to what it once was. We could do a narrow carve out for voting rights or democracy legislation. There's other strategies we're contemplating to try to meet some of their concerns and objections. But the day of decision is upon us, and we must act, and we must let people know who feel like their rights are threatened that somebody's trying to stand up for them.
To give some context to what you're talking about here, I think the backdrop of this new poll out from Quinnipiac today is important, showing that a majority of Americans, 58%, believe the nation's democracy is in danger of collapse. You mentioned Republican unanimity against this, Senator. I don't know if you had a chance to see Senator Mitch McConnell and his remarks on the Senate floor. We summarized them at the top of the show there. Your response?
Well, Senator McConnell, his colleague, whatever he said on the floor today, here's what I know. His colleagues make very plain that one of the reasons that Mitch McConnell is an effective leader is he gives them latitude. He gives them latitude to do what they think is right. He may not support them, he may not vote with them, but he gives them latitude. But as has been explained to us, Senator Mitch McConnell, the Republican leader, has two red lines. Thou shalt not work with Democrats on voting rights. Thou shalt not work with Democrats on campaign finance reform. And both of these are contained in these two acts, the Freedom to Vote Act and the John Lewis Act. We know that because of Mitch McConnell's effectiveness in setting red lines that his Republican colleagues won't cross, that we're not going to get Republican support to protect these rights that are being jeopardized by Republican legislatures and governors all over this country.
I mentioned that Q poll that has just come out. It shows just 33% of Americans approve, I should say, of President Biden's job right now. Why do you think that is? Do you think the White House needs to recalibrate as we head into this midterm year?
Here's what I think. I think the overwhelming factor in this is the fact that Americans, after nearly 2 years of the pandemic, are feeling burdened and tired by it. I know I am. I know everybody I know is. And so as long as we are dealing with this, and we're nearly 2 years into it, it is putting a lid on people's enthusiasm about great economic numbers, for example, an unemployment rate that's 3.9% or 6 million jobs created in the first years of the Biden administration. My belief is this. I think we're going to get into the spring, and we're not going to be past COVID, but we're going to be in the spring, and the combination of the percentage vaccinated and the percentage who have natural antibodies is going to be quite high. And I think there's going to be a real sense of psychological uplift that the economy is moving strongly and that we are exiting the most challenging 2 years of my lifetime in this country. And I think there's a real sense of uplift around the corner. President Biden can give a speech at the 2-year anniversary of COVID in March or April and say, this has been absolutely horrible for so many death, illness, economic loss, but there's an American comeback underway. I don't know of anybody who can give a comeback speech better than Joseph Biden. And I think there's one out there for him. And I think people's senses and their psychology and their feeling about themselves and about this country could be very, very different in a couple of months than it is right now.
Okay, so that was Senator Tim Kaine talking about a lot of different things there. You saw that Quinnipiac poll. That was pretty interesting, right? So President Biden's approval rating, 33%. That is very, very low. And so this is one of those things where, and I agree with Senator Tim Kaine when it came to fighting. You have to fight. I don't care if you're a Democrat or Republican. If you vote for someone and that person's in office, you want that person to fight. You want that party to fight. So if you're a Democrat, you want Democrats to fight. If you're a Republican, you want Republicans to fight. And so they need to start doing that. Democrats need to call this to the floor, call these bills to the floor, see where they go. Hold these senators out there and say, hey, do you want to vote against your best interest? Do you want to vote for the people? Whatever it is, how are you going to go? How are you going to move? Don't just go with this, they said that they weren't going to vote for it. But Senator Manchin's been saying this the whole time, right? That he's not for this, he's not for that. But he hasn't been called to the carpet on it. You need to call him to the floor, say, look, you're going to vote yes or no. We want you on record, because when these people in West Virginia come back and say, well, why weren't you for us when it came to this and come to this? He can't just step back and say, you know what? I mean, Build Back Better is a perfect example of this, right? Build Back Better, there's a lot of different things in there. He can always pick the little things that he doesn't like about the bill and say, well, I didn't go along with it because I didn't like this little part or this little part. So if you call him to the floor and he actually has to be on record saying that he's against a child tax credit, or he's against Medicare expansion, or he's against some of the other things that were in this bill, prescription drug reform, all these different things, now he's going to have to answer to his constituents and say, look, I was against this. And he'll have to try to explain why he was against it, but he's on record. Okay, it's not one of those things where he's saying, I was trying to negotiate with the White House. I wanted this, or I wanted that, or I never said that I was against this. Now, if he votes against it, then we know he's against it. So, and plus, when you start putting people on record, they tend to change their tune, or they at least want to say, okay, hold up, let's negotiate a little bit more. Before I go on record, I want to negotiate a little bit more. And so when it comes to the voting rights bills, if they can figure out a way or a workaround when it comes to the filibuster, maybe they can do that when it comes to a stimulus package, because that's something that they're talking about as well. February 18th, we're looking at a situation where they're going to have to do a continued resolution for funding the government. At that time, there's talk that we might see another stimulus package. And right now, just looking at that Quinnipiac poll, the 33% the president's approval rating is really in the gutter. It's down. And so he needs to do something in order to show that he's fighting for the American people. What better way to show that you're fighting for the American people than to have some type of emergency response to what's going on when it comes to COVID? We also have to address the fact that inflation is here. It's here to stay. What the numbers just came out, 7% over the all of last year. That's really bad. So we're looking at a situation where things need to change, and we need to see that politicians are actually fighting, because if you don't see that, then you might as well go with the other side, right? And that's what Republicans are banking on. They're sitting on the sidelines. They're not saying anything. They're just waiting and watching things and saying, I hope this gets worse. I hope it gets worse before it gets better. That way, in a few months, you're going to start hearing them, because they're going to be running for re-election. So you're going to start hearing them come out and just criticize every single thing that they can. But all we want, I think all the American people want, I don't care what side you're on, all you want is someone to fight for you. And if you feel like you're not getting that, if you feel like you're not getting someone fighting for you, that's when there's a problem. Okay, so I want to check out the polls that I posted. And I posted two, but one was really the one that I want to focus on. But I did ask a question. Are you interested in seeing polls about popular news stories or just public policy stories? So I was just asking you guys, are you interested in seeing more than just the public policy stuff that we talk about? So Social Security reform, Medicare reform, prescription drug reform, all these different bills, Build Back Better, the voting rights bill. Are you interested in just hearing about that, or do you want to hear about some of the other top news stories that are going on in the world? And 70% of you guys, so we had 290 people vote so far. Please go over in the description. I'll post a link to all of the polls that we do, as well as in the comments section. I'll have a comment that's pinned at the very top. So if you drop down to the comments, you're going to see a link there. You just click on that and it'll take you over to all the polls. And please participate in the polls. So 70% of the people said yes, they want to see a variety of different news stories. And so that's what I plan to do. So it's not just going to be public policy. We're going to be talking about some of the different news stories that are out there right now. And some of them are really fascinating. And sometimes I want to just kind of get your input when it comes to some of these stories that we look at and we see every day. I want to know how you guys feel about that. So let's move down to the story that we were talking about earlier today. Should Novak, we'll just call him Novak D, because I don't know how to pronounce his last name, be sent home and not allowed to play in the Australian Open due to his lack of vaccination? Okay, so this is a real hot button issue in Australia right now. So we have this gentleman. He's a tennis player, the number one tennis player in the world, and he did not get vaccinated. And he was able to travel to Australia, although Australia has rules that says you need to be fully vaccinated in order to be allowed into the country. So he's in this situation now where he didn't get vaccinated, and the whole arguments, well, I don't need to get vaccinated. I don't want to get vaccinated. And so it went to court. It actually went to court, and the judge ruled that he can go ahead and play. So this is bringing a new issue out there, right? People are starting to look at this and think, well, if he can do it, why can't I do it? Okay, and I'll tell you a little story about that. I have a Colombia trip that's planned. I'll talk a little bit about that, and I'll use that as an example. But let's go ahead and look at the poll. So yes, he should not get special treatment. That's 70% of the people said this. We had 977 people participate in this poll, and then we have 30% of the people saying no, that he should be allowed to go ahead and play in the Australian Open. And so that is the poll there. Now, when it comes down to it, and this is the way I feel about it, and I'm with the 70%. I think that, look, if you're going to another country, you abide by their rules, whatever their rules are. So if they say that you need to be vaccinated, you need to be vaccinated. If you're not vaccinated, sorry, you have to turn around at the airport and go back because they're not going to allow you in, and they shouldn't allow you in. But in this situation, he's getting special treatment. He was actually able to go into the country, and he quarantined in the country for a while he was waiting for the judge to rule on this. And now they're finding out even more information that the documents that he filled out when he came in to the country, like a kind of a declaration form, he didn't fill it out correctly. And then now he's saying, well, I didn't fill it out. Someone filled it out for me. But the reality is you're responsible for whatever's on there. I mean, it's your document. I can't say anytime I travel, you fill out this declaration form when you go into a country. And if there's something on there that's questionable or not right, you're responsible for it. That card is given to you. Now, if you want to have someone else fill it out for you, that's your choice, but you're still responsible for what's on there. So nonetheless, we're in a situation right now where I truly believe that he should not be able to play in the Australian Open. If he doesn't want to get vaccinated, that's fine. You know what? You're giving up your right at that point to play in the Australian Open because you're in their country and these are their requirements and you're not abiding by their requirements. Just like I was explaining earlier, I'm going to Colombia next month. Guess what? Colombia, you need to be fully vaccinated in order to go into Colombia. And so you either need to be fully vaccinated or partially vaccinated. And if you're partially vaccinated, you have to have a PCR test before you enter the country. So you have to have at least one shot. And let's say you're in that transition. So you have the one shot, but you haven't been able to get the next shot. Well, they'll let you do a PCR test and show that you're negative before you're allowed in. Or if you're fully vaccinated, then you're allowed in. You just need to show them that you're fully vaccinated. And so that's their rules. Now, who am I to just go there and say, let's say I'm not vaccinated at all, just go there and say, no, I don't agree with that. I'm going to go ahead and enjoy my time in Colombia. No, it's not. That's not how it works. But that's what they're doing for him. They're making a special accommodation for him, which I think is ridiculous. And if you get to that point where you start making special accommodations for people like him, then why aren't you making special accommodations for everyone? So that's how I feel about that whole situation. But that is in the news right now. And so we're going to do some more polls. There'll be another poll out early or later today, so make sure you guys participate in that poll. But and if you guys have any suggestions for polls, post them down in the comment section. Also, I'd like to see that. I can take from some of the different ideas that you guys have. If you guys like this video, please give me a thumbs up. Please subscribe for more, and I'll talk to you in the next one. Bye.